Hello, people of the internet. Welcome to TK is Outlandish. I am TK, also known as Teresa in real life, and this is my husband Ryan.
Hi,
Um,
everyone.
if you haven't been to our channel before, we review Outlander. I am the book reader. Ryan has not read the book, so we just compare what happens in the show to what has happened in the books, how it translates from the books, and then I usually bring up spoilers. I will tell you when there's a spoiler coming up from the book, and then I make a prediction as to what will happen in the next episode and in the future. Did I sum everything up pretty well, do you think?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm looking forward to talking about this episode. There was a lot that's happened. We got a lot of backstory that was desperately needed. Yeah, let's talk about some stuff.
Yeah, it was a really good episode. And I decided this episode to see who wrote it and who directed it. The director was Lisa Clark. I don't know who that is. But the writer was Tony Graffia. And I've noticed that when she does episodes, she tries to incorporate a lot in from the books. She says, um, so I really appreciate it. So quick recap as to what happens this episode titled "The Happiest Place on Earth." We found out what happened to Malva, between Malva and Alan. Um, Bree gave birth to her daughter Amanda, and we found out she has a heart defect known as PDA. Um, Bree meets her half brother William. I call it the Jamie Lord John breakup happens. Bree and Roger go back to the future, and Wendigo tries to rob Claire and Jamie and blows up the surgery. That's a pretty
That
good.
that sounds about right. That sums
Yeah.
it up.
All right. So, what was your overall impression of the episode?
I thought it was a very good episode. We don't have a lot to compare it to from this season so far, um, but I thought it did great. It brought up a lot of stuff that we needed to that needed clarification. It tied up a couple loose ends. It The one thing I really wasn't a big fan of was the flashbacks that they did with Malva and
You know
Al.
what? Me too. I don't think it was necessary.
Well, not necessarily the flashbacks themselves. I actually do think those were useful,
Mm-hmm.
but the first person view that they used for the camera angles, the
Mm-hmm.
cinematography, just seemed out of place. I don't think I've seen it, or I don't recall seeing it in the series before. It just seemed very, yeah, out of place.
Yeah, it kind of, now that you mention it, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the flashbacks that Roger had after he was hanged. How it like played in his head like a movie. It
Hmm.
kind of reminded me of that a little bit. Now
Yeah,
that you,
yeah. There was that. You're right. That was another one of those.
but yeah, I think overall it was a really good episode. I felt very emotionally tied to it. And I think this was originally supposed to be how season 6 ended, with the house exploding. So imagine if that was the end of season 6 with
Mm,
no, um, like what's coming up in the next episode preview. Just, just an explosion.
that would have been something. That would have been something.
Mhm. So, let's get into it. Do you want to bring up the first screenshot?
Yep.
There's Alan. I Alan's my least favorite character, and I feel bad for the actor who portrayed him because it's not that I don't think he did a good job. I cannot find any redeeming qualities in Alan, and I never have.
I'm not sure that I can disagree.
Yeah.
Alan, I kept trying to like Alan, and he just didn't help himself at all.
Oh, it was just like I couldn't find any. I couldn't really find it from his point of view. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I know that Tom was a hard character, but I could understand part of where he was coming from, and he redeemed himself at the end. Melva, even before we know what happened to her, I thought she had like redeeming qualities. But Alan, I'm just like he. I just Alan, just Alan. So so here's what I think though about like the flat. Okay, so we find out that um Alan was Melva's half brother slash cousin. Cousin? Yeah. And he was the father of Melva's baby, and he put Melva up to saying the baby was Jamie's, and he says that he thought that Jamie would just give her money to go away and they could go away together. Here's the thing about like, Claire was like, oh, my sweet Melva, I should have been able to help her and stuff. Here's the one thing that I cannot get past and look at Melva as a completely tragic victim. She still tried to kill Claire, and it was unnecessary. Because even if you say, like, Alan would have put her up to it, he said he wanted Jamie to just, like, pay her off so they could go off to wherever they were going to go off to.
Right.
Um, and you don't need Claire to be dead to do that. Like, if, you just don't need Claire to be dead. And she tried to kill Tom, too, with the same way. So you can't even say that she was just trying to make her sick to take advantage of that to try to seduce Jamie, which is what she like basically tried to do. So I just like that just really and for the rest of the book and even like through the other books, Claire has like these thoughts of Melva. She's just like, oh, my poor Melva, she's still a sore spot. And it's like, but she tried to kill you, and she did try to steal your husband. And I know you could say like she was abused, she was taken advantage of. Yes, she was, but she still tried to kill you. So
Yeah, it's hard for me to really drum up any sympathy for Alan. Um, Malva, on the other hand, I want to feel a little bit of sympathy for her. Uh, I don't know if I can either. Um,
really, hmm.
yeah, because she obviously went through a lot, and this episode revealed exactly what she was put through. And anyone who went through what she went through would probably not right in the head a little bit, have some issues. Um, so that was making me a little bit sympathetic towards her.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember from last season, there was that scene where Claire came to see Malva after Malva and Tom and Alan went to Jamie, and she tried to make things right. And this was she was outside of her house, and you could see as she was talking, as Claire and Malva were talking, that the and I mentioned this whenever we recorded our episode 2 back then, that you could see kind of like the walls cracking a little bit. You could see her defenses breaking, and she looks like she was about to say something really important. And then Alan came out and put the kibosh on the whole thing, and turned around. She turned her back to Claire and took a second to compose herself, turned back around, and she was just, stern faced Malva again.
Mm-hmm.
So she was a willing participant, at least that part of it.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing Ryan and I were talking about this the other day because these are the conversations we have. Um, in the flashback, it was played as Malva was an unwilling participant and like just very like stoic about the whole thing. And I had just wondered because in the book, she doesn't tell Alan that she doesn't love him. She just says she loves Claire, which is another thing too. She says she loves Claire, but I tried to kill her. Um, but I was like, what if it played that she was, quote, in love with Alan? Oh, for the simple fact that that's like all she knew. Although I was thinking about this earlier because Ryan, you had pointed out like when she was like spying on Jamie and Claire together. Like maybe
in,
that's
in the
in the book.
barn.
Yeah. Um, like maybe she realized like, hey, this isn't what I'm experiencing, you know? And I was wondering if like maybe before that she wasn't so like stoic, and like after that she realized like this isn't what it's supposed to be like. What do you think?
So where exactly in the timeline did that flashback happen?
That's what I was trying to remember. Um
Well, I mean, I don't think they gave us any indication of when that flashback was supposed to be
mhm.
with uh, with Alan and Malva.
Well,
Uh,
she said she was already pregnant, but she must have been like 1 or 2 months. So yeah, I was trying to look back too and think about it, but I couldn't like quite. I have a really hard time trying to keep like timelines in Outlander because they're already kind of hard in the book, and they're even looser in the series. So it's kind of hard to tell because like even I said when when Melva came to say she was pregnant, I think I see. I don't even remember, but there was one point in the last season I was like, shouldn't Bree be looking like she's a little bit pregnant, and she wasn't. So I don't know. So it was really hard, but that was like something that had occurred to me. But yes, that's the whole thing about like not being able to be totally sympathetic to Melva because of the trying to kill Claire is what made her such a great character though, I think. And I really think that the actress did a really good job portraying her. So,
yeah, I agree. I'm glad that they kept that as it was because
mhm,
I'm really put off by the kind of antagonist turned justified. You know, the
mhm,
trend where like, oh, it's a bad person, but oh, look at all these things that happened to them in their past, and it's all completely justified. Uh,
mhm,
and then they become a very sympathetic character. I'm glad they didn't do that to Malva and left her as just kind of this ambiguous, um, yeah, not great what she did, not great what happened to her. Did she deserve it? Did she not deserve things? I'm glad they left it all very ambiguous.
mhm. And then let's go to what did I want to
This
say?
bug.
Oh, Mrs. Bug. Yes, our next screenshot. Yeah, Mrs. Bug just like appears like like a creeper. That is definitely is not in the book. And all I could think was this is gonna come up like in the future. I don't think she was there for no reason. So I don't know if she's gonna be like blackmailing them or I'm not sure. But this is definitely I think this is definitely something that's gonna come up later.
Yeah, for sure.
Hmm.
I I think from Mrs. Bug and Mr. I mean, I remember from last season, Mr. Bug had that kind of uh, run in with Roger, and they were talking
Hmm.
about you know, don't say these things to my kid. So we
Yeah,
see that like Mr. Bug and Mrs. Bug are kind of questionable characters.
yeah, and she had. Do you remember when right after Melva was killed and Hiram Crombie came up and Mrs. Bug was like, "You must have hated her. You must have. You probably wanted her dead or whatever."
Yeah,
And Jane's like, "Mrs. Bug, shut up." So there's like a little bit of like, that's that wouldn't be something I would say to my employer who gives me shelter basically, and I live on their land.
hmm
So yeah, so I'm definitely curious as to where that's gonna lead to. So next slide.
all right.
Bree Roger and baby Amanda. I just thought it was really sweet the scene where Jamie like took her out to the barn and said, "This could be your horse, and I'm gonna teach you how to ride it, and you're gonna be a great equestrian, except you pronounce it a different way. Equestrian, something. You pronounced it an odd way. Well, odd for me. Um, and then they shoot to Claire, and Claire's like, you could be a surgeon. So I really liked that they were, Jamie was like, you could be, an equestrian, and Claire, you could be a surgeon. So there's this sense that they permanency, and Amanda growing up there and planning to live there. So I wanted to point out a real quick thing that that I missed the first time I saw this. Um, in the book, um, Jamie and Claire are there when um, Brianna gives birth to Jemmy. They're not there in the show, but in the book, Claire kind of explains to Jamie, it's like a baseball game. There's moments of intense of a lot of action. There's a lot of waiting around. So there was this line that Claire says, "Okay, the boring part's over. We're at the bottom of the ninth." And I think like I said, like Tony Graffio seems to really try to implement those book things. And if they can't do something that the first, like they couldn't do it with the scene with Bree giving birth to Jemmy, so they like brought it in with Amanda, because Bree giving birth to Amanda is not in the book. They just have her the announcement in the newspaper, which so I think it's supposed to be the timeline is supposed to be around November, because historically um the governor left his palace and was living on the boat at the end of May, and Brie was like around, I would say, 4 months pregnant. And then I think she gave birth around November. And it does say in the book that it was the beginning of November when Claire encounters Alan at Melva's grave. So I think it's around November ish. Um, and then what I thought kind of funny though was when Claire went to look, or Claire went to listen to Mandy's heart, and they had the sound effect of the heart beating. Like, we don't know what it's supposed to sound like. Like what? Like, oh, did you think the audience would not understand that she was listening to her heart? Do you know what I mean? I just didn't understand why they did that.
I guess it was just they didn't want silence. Better than silence, I guess.
Maybe. Maybe we'll find out when we listen to the podcast.
That's right.
Yes. Oh, go ahead. Were you gonna say something?
No.
Oh, if anyone doesn't know, there's an official Outlander podcast, and we usually end up watching it as we're watching the episode again. So it's like almost like a commentary, director's commentary. So
They're good. I recommend them if people haven't done that. I'd rewatch the episodes with a commentary. They're nice.
mhm. If you're really, especially if you're really into like how they develop the show, if you want to hear, not not every episode does like the background of how they cast people or how they build things or special effects. Um, but I find it really fascinating. So, all that stuff that goes into a production of a show. Oh, the one thing I've wondered this, and it doesn't say it in the book, and I wonder it, but like Jemmy's name has like 8 names. It's like Jemmy, Alexander, Ian. So you know who he was named after, and then Amanda's full name is Amanda Claire Hope. And I had wondered where the hope came from. And I kind of wonder if it's kind of for faith.
That's
The Do you think so? Because it's not like it's kind of close. Hope is kind of close to faith, but it's not directly being named after their stillborn daughter. So I
yeah.
had just wondered that.
I would agree with that. That's kind of what I thought about it.
Hmm. Um, and when Claire, so I felt a certain way when I thought the scene where Brianna and Roger were reacting to the news that um, Amanda had a birth, or not a birth, heart defect, was really good, and it affected me in a certain way because we've mentioned in another episode that two of our sons have Down syndrome, and it's very common to have heart defects with Down syndrome. Like our sons don't. Our one son had a very tiny hole in his heart when he was born, but it didn't affect him. But like I know a lot of families that had heart defects, the same heart defect that Mandy had that needed surgery. So and like fortunately in this modern day and age, it's not that operating on a small child's heart is commonplace, but it's so I don't even want to say routine, but it's not the extraordinary thing that it would have been even in
It's
the
it's no
what
longer
is
life.
it, 70s now. What's that?
It's no longer life threatening.
Yeah. So so I kind of like put myself in that situation where I can I could really relate to being told that something was wrong with your kid, you know. So, did you feel that way at all, Ryan, or was that like a me thing?
I think that was mostly a you thing. Uh, yeah, I don't actually know any other parents with kids that have that heart condition. You're much more tied into the community than I am, so
No, yeah, that's true. So, but I do know that Hope that Claire said I do know a doctor that can, and like not that Joe Abernathy from season 3 was the only doctor she knew, but I wonder if she was referring to him, and I wonder if he'll make an appearance in later in the next couple episodes.
I hope so. He was a fun guy to watch. We haven't really seen a whole lot of him, but what little bit we did see was I liked him.
Mm-hmm. Um, and then I also like the scene where Jamie prays to I forget the saint's name, but the patron saint of horsemen, I think it
Yeah,
was. Because through the books, Jamie knows like the patron saint of every situation. He just like pulls it out of his hat. Oh yes, that's Saint blah blah blah. You know? So I think that was like an allusion to that aspect of Jamie.
hmm
Oh, so what did you think when Demi was like, um, oh yeah, Amanda can hear the stone. She told me.
yeah. Okay, so Demi's psychic now, so they're just like I don't know. Is Amanda telekinetic? I don't know. Like what's happening anymore? Um, like I'm still kind of upset that they haven't set the ground rules of like why did the stone break in Jemmy's hand
Yeah.
whenever he picked it up in the last two seasons ago. Um,
Mhm.
why did they get kicked out of the stones and come back to here, which is pertinent to their.
That that bothers me because that didn't happen in the book, and I don't understand what the point of it was.
It seemed very
Only
yes.
Yeah, the only thing I can think of from like a protection point of view is they weren't. And I actually might have read this, or someone in our comment section might have said this too. Um, that they weren't sure if there was going to be a season 6, so maybe they wanted to like establish that Roger and Brianna were just going to be there and they couldn't go back because the end of season 6 was kind of like it wasn't a cliffhanger, which is kind of like we'll weather this upcoming storm of the revolution, and Roger and Brianna are like, oh, we're here to stay. So that's the only thing I can think of.
That's plausible. I've watched many sci-fi series that were not very long lived, and some that were surprisingly long lived. That they were coming
Couldn't have been long
they were
lived.
into their contracts and they weren't sure if were gonna get renewed, and so they started setting things up as if they weren't going to be renewed, but kind of left the door open just in case they were. So
Mhm.
it kind of makes sense. Um, but then that's the fact remains that they put that in there, and now it's just kind of a thing that happened. And considering how time travel was pretty key to this whole this
Right.
series, um, they kind of owe it to us, I think, to explain what in the world happened.
Hmm. And
Did
they kind of didn't. And not to jump in. I'm sorry, you were saying.
is Jemmy like a super traveler or something? He has like ultra control powers. Like if Jemmy's
Kind
thinking of,
of.
then none of them go home. Like
What's that?
if like Jemmy is thinking of home as Fraser's Ridge, does he overpower everyone else? I don't understand. And that
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you have to kind of explain that, which they didn't. Like, why is that? Because that would be the only home that Jemmy knew, and Jemmy's not old enough to think. Like, even if Bree and Roger were concentrating on, like, oh, we have to get back to for Amanda. Like, Jemmy's not gonna understand that. So is he gonna be like, no, I want to stay with Granda and Grandmama, Grandma, or whatever he calls
yeah.
her.
So
Yeah.
to bring it back to what you said with Jemmy and Amanda, like I don't understand what that point of that was. It was it just like
It's in the
what
book.
was
That
it
part,
a
that
device?
line's in the
Like,
book.
oh hey, he can travel. How do you know he can travel? He just can, or she just can. Like,
Yeah.
okay, thanks. I guess I'll just hang a lantern on that, and we'll okay.
No, I think they'll come back to it in the
Mm,
next
see, they
episode.
didn't the last
Well,
time. Stones.
it's true. Um. So okay, back to our next picture, Bree and
Yeah,
William.
let's jump to Bree and William.
Mhm. So here's my question: like when William said, and I meant to go back to season 4 and see this episode real quick, and I didn't. But when he says, when John's like, "This is the daughter of my friend Jamie Fraser," and William's like, "Oh yes, he was the groom at Hellwater." Like you didn't know his name was Jamie then. You knew him as um Alexander Malcolm and you called him Mac. So why wouldn't you say, "Oh yes, I remember when we visited them on Fraser's Ridge."
Hmm.
Like that would make more sense. Right? I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah,
Well, anyway. So, but at least I don't think that William looks like Jamie, but at least his eyes are blue and he's tall,
yeah,
right? At
yeah.
least,
True.
at least he has that going for him. Um, and one of the things that makes I think Brie more kind of unlikable in the book is she's kind of like Claire in the way that she doesn't understand how things work in the 18th century, even though she's been there for several years. Like she kind of grills Lord John about like, well, why didn't my father marry her mother? And John's like, he was a groom. Are you crazy? Like, what is wrong with you? He couldn't do that, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
the Bree was pretty bad with that, and she just doesn't get it. Like
I
Claire.
don't think
Claire's gotten a little bit better with it, but she's still pretty bad. And Bree just has like no respect for time.
I don't think she I don't think she was as bad as what I described in the book. Like she was kind of like, do you think you should tell him? And you know what I mean.
Hmm.
She wasn't like she was just more insistent in the book. Let's just say that.
Yeah, I'm glad
Um,
she did eventually just kind of give it up and just like, okay, yeah, you're right.
yeah. Did you find okay? So I I said that Lord John had like Interview of the Vampire vibes for me, but I don't. Did you find that? Did you find a picture of Brad Pitt
I didn't
from?
find a picture of it, but yeah, you're absolutely right. He does look like Brad Pitt in Interview with the
Yeah.
Vampire. Number of
Do you
scenes.
have that picture?
Hmm? Do I have?
Do you have the picture of Lord John?
I don't have a picture of Lord John. No.
Okay, that's okay. I only put that there because I wanted to like compare him and Brad Pitt in Interview with the Vampire, but I'm old enough that I actually saw that movie in the theater when it came out, and all I kept thinking was, he looks like a vampire. Um,
Oh yeah, my friend made me go see it 3 or 4 times in the theater. Yeah, so I yes, I'm very familiar with it. Maybe next episode, I'll get a couple pictures together and we'll side by side them.
so what's funny is I always ask Ryan, like I'll make comments while we're watching, like, oh, this is what happened in the book, and I'll say, like, is it okay? Do you care if I say this is what happened in the book and not this? He's like, no, it's fine. And the reason I ask that is because when my friend and I went to see Interview with the Vampire, we went with a couple other people from college, and this one girl, all through the movie, was just saying, comparing it to what happened in the book. But what she would do was say what happened right before it happens. So, and it was quite annoying.
One
And
of
so
those.
that's why, yeah. So that's why I'm always like, do you care if I talk about what happens in the book? But Ryan never does.
I no, I appreciate that, but like we have already established that we are doing this, and so having a little bit of book background like doesn't bother me. In the theaters, if we were watching this in the theater and you were like whispering in my ear, yeah, I might have you not.
She wasn't whispering either. She was just like talking kind of normal, slightly quiet, but not really.
Mhm.
So like I'm sure everyone around us heard her too, and they wanted to kill her. So anyway, I know my friend did. So so when John gives back the sapphire to Jamie in the book, he actually does not give him that one. He keeps it. John has a ring, and I don't remember if they said he wears it on like his ring finger, but he wears a ring on his left hand that, if you remember back in season 3 when he said he had a dear friend that he lost at Culloden,
Yeah.
that was actually like his first lover, Hector, and he gave him a ring, and it was a sapphire. So in the book, John gives Jamie that ring. But what I found interesting was, like, if you're wearing a ring on your left hand, on your ring finger, like he was married to Isabel, wouldn't you be like, if you're Isabel, wouldn't you be like, hey, why you wear that ring on your finger? Where
Was actually the
where
tradition back then,
where
left ring finger, was that still a tradition back then?
I mean, Bree wears her wedding ring on her left finger. I mean, from what
Well, Bree
I,
would of course do that because she's from the future.
I mean, from what I understand, um, because like that tradition goes back to like ancient Roman times.
Okay, I mean
So
maybe it does. I'm not sure. I was just wondering.
okay. Well, anyway, that was just um what I wanted to throw out there. So
I gotta ask: is anyone else really wish Jamie would tell Lord John about the time travel nonsense? Like everything. Like,
I think he wants to.
I'm sure he wants to because
Mm-mm.
he doesn't want to hurt Lord John. He's a
Yeah.
good friend. He
Hmm.
trusts him. He's an honor. They're both honorable guys. He doesn't want to hurt him. And
Yeah, and
once
he doesn't want him to be like killed in action. Well, I don't know if Lord John will actually like fight in the army, but it's like, you're gonna lose. Your side's gonna lose,
I
and he
know, I feel
doesn't want
yeah,
William.
Lord John would
Yeah,
be okay to tell. I think he would be. He'd be like, ah, well, that explains a whole lot. Um, and I think I understand why I can't ask you more about this because it'll ruin things more, ruin the timeline more. I don't know. I think Lord John would have a difficult time accepting it, but it would be like, oh, okay, well, that would makes a lot of things make sense.
Hmm. Um, and when the whole, I call it the breakup with Lord John, when Jamie says like we need to sever this friendship, that actually doesn't happen face to face in the book. Jamie just like writes him a letter, like, you know, it's just too much. We
Uh,
should, you know.
that
Um,
in person in the TV series absolutely
yeah,
had because it was
yeah.
that
In fact, oh, go ahead.
dramatic moment between the two of them. You know, you had to see that chemistry between the two of them.
I don't even think Lord John. No, at the I think in book 5, he doesn't show up until the end of book 6. I don't even think Lord John's in it, except for it's just letters back and forth. Because Bree in the book doesn't even know William exists until she sees him on the street and like realizes she's quite mad that no one has told her. Um, next.
Yeah, let's jump to Bree and Jamie.
We've been going on for like half an hour here. I'm trying to wrap it up. First of all, let me tell you, I can't. I hate CGI fireflies. No one ever gets them right, or as we call them where we live, lightning bugs. They do not look like that. They don't look like embers glowing in the forest. And like when Jamie catches one and it lights up like it's gonna like sets his hands on fire. Like that's not what they look like.
It does look ridiculous. It looks like
Yeah.
it reminds me of like fireflies from like a Miyazaki animation. It's like, they're like will-o-wisps. They're not like
Yes.
as I don't know what they were trying to go for, but they didn't do fireflies.
No, and plus, if you know fireflies, they almost have like a greenish like tinge to them, and like that's not what they look like. But anyway, so to go on, so the conversation with Bree is very close to the book. I love Jamie's reaction when Bree tries to explain a giant mouse named Mickey that children go up to, and he's just like horrified of the thought of a giant mouse.
I'm glad he felt comfortable enough to tell Jamie this.
Yeah,
But really, Bree, you said all of that with a straight face. Um,
yeah.
Jamie, and like you didn't stop to like explain any of the stuff to him until the very end when she's like, "Oh no, it's a guy in a mouse costume," which still
Yeah.
doesn't help a lot. It's
Right.
that's
That doesn't sound any better, really.
yeah, right. Like so, he's a terrifying creature in a like what is it?
Who tries to hide his identity from children?
Yeah,
Um. Well, when the conversation they have when Brianna tries to imagine Jamie like in the future, she actually just thinks it. She doesn't say it out loud. But of course, being in a TV show, she like you know says it. But here's the thing: when she's like, "Oh, I picture you driving in on a car in a three-piece suit and watching a movie in Godzilla," he doesn't understand the words you're saying. Like he doesn't understand movie. He doesn't understand Godzilla. Godzilla. Like he would be like, "Oh, is that like a demon?" like
if he even would recognize, yeah, it's it's like when if he were to speak just straight Gaelic to her, like
yes, yes. Oh, but I just thought that was kind of like funny and kind of stupid. Like I know when they did it, but it was like, really, Brie has no idea what you're saying.
yeah, Bree, yeah, come on.
So I don't. Okay, so I don't have a screenshot for this, but the
I
next
was
scene.
I was wondering if you were gonna bring this one up.
Oh,
Good,
oh,
good.
did you read? Did you read? Oh, you read my notes,
I
Ryan.
did.
What was your reaction when Claire threw that black diamond out the window?
That was baffling to me. I don't have a screenshot for this scene, but whenever Jamie was telling Claire, you can go back with them, and he hands her the diamond, and Claire's reaction isn't, "Oh no, thank you." It's, "I'm gonna take this gemstone and throw it out the window." Why? Why do that? These gems are valuable not because they're gems, but because they're like keys to get you to and from the future. Who knows when you're gonna need one?
Yeah.
What are you doing? Why? Like just put it down. No, thank you, Jamie. No, thank you. I'll stay. But no, yeah,
I
Frank
I
that.
I compared it to the end scene of Titanic when she like throws the necklace overboard. Which, by the way, if you never saw Titanic, I guess I just spoiled it for you.
They had 20 years. I think we're good now.
But oh, Jamie having like a forward dream, I guess, of Claire. That's in the book too. Um, Here's my question. I guess Ocracoke isn't that big of an island because I looked it up. It's like 9 miles. But how did they know to like? Where did they know where the stones were? Because in the book, um, I can't remember if it's Bree who is escaping from Stephen Bonnet who sees the stones, or if it's Roger while he's looking for her that sees the stones. Um, but they know where they are on Ocracoke because they were seen, like that's where Wendigo Donner came through too, but they already knew about them because of the kidnapping by Stephen Bonnet. But like how did they row up? They're like Ocracoke Island is like 9 miles. How did they just happen to row up right where the stones were? He didn't say where they were on
The
Ocracoke.
only thing I can think of is that in some point in time that we didn't see in the TV show, they because did they mention did Donner mention the Ocracoke stones at all to Claire?
No, to Roger, I think.
No, to Roger.
Didn't he say we came on Ocracoke Island on last episode? He
Yeah,
said
yeah. So that wouldn't really have been enough time then. I was thinking if they, at some point in time before all this, when there was like maybe a good time jump of a couple months, maybe they're like, oh, hey, we should go check out and see where these other stones are, just so we have a um, full sense of what the where all the stones are in case we need them. And
mm-hmm.
they made like a trip out to Ocracoke, checked it out, and came back home. And they're like, okay, well, we know where it is now, just in case.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't seem like that's what happened.
So the scene where they went back, I thought was very touching. That didn't happen in the book. And I also but in the book they prepared to leave by making like Bree made a pair of pants for herself. Like they tried to make clothes that would have looked more appropriate when they went through,
Mm-hmm.
but this they just like went through in their 18th century clothes. Like okay, like
They're Renfest actors. They just they're really into their bits. They're gonna walk into town, and everyone's gonna be like, "Oh, you're giving a tour? Great!"
and you would think like, wait, if you're in a Ren Fest, wouldn't you be wearing clothes from the Renaissance? But no, if you've ever gone to a Renaissance festival, at least the one we went to, people wear just like whatever I swear to you, one year I saw
1920s
someone
and
dressed up like Teddy Roosevelt. I'm not kidding. Like Rough Rider Teddy Roosevelt at the Renaissance Festival.
yep, yep.
It's just like anything goes. Um. Oh, bring up the next.
Last picture for this.
Yes, last one. I thought this scene was like really touching because this was not in the book and you just get really a sense of how much Jamie and Claire have lost. Oh, and I mean, if you've been alive for so long, I mean, that's life. You lose people in life. But it's like they just like they lost everything in Lollybrook. You know what I mean? They lost everything. They didn't have anything when they landed on the shores of Georgia. They had their gems stolen from them. They had nothing. They like build all this up and they lose just like all the loss that they've had. And then this is also something like you think, well, I think about when like their house is gonna burn down. Well, if you didn't know that, spoiler, the house is gonna burn down. Well, if you saw the preview, you clearly see that the house is just a shell. But I thought this scene was like really hit it home, like how much just loss there is. But they're still together, you
Yeah,
know,
I
like like the core.
I know, that time period, people experienced loss a lot more. I think,
Mm-hmm.
just
Oh, yeah.
from wars, from famines, from
From
disease,
sickness, yeah.
everything. Everything's just looking to kill you. And
Mm-hmm.
and Jamie, that's his time period. He's kind of used to just being surrounded by death. Claire is not. It's still very much not a foreign thing, but it's still a very uncomfortable thing for her, especially because
Well,
she's a doctor who tries to fight
exactly.
at every turn. And, certainly the people they lost weren't, victims to things that she could have prevented, but
Mm-hmm.
losses nonetheless.
Mm-hmm.
And that, yeah, I agree that it's a very touching um, summary of all of the things they've lost in the past 7 seasons.
Mm-hmm. Um, so the only other thing, you can take that picture down if you want, because I didn't ask for any more screenshots.
Yeah, yeah,
There we are. Yeah, the last scene where Donner shows up, that's also very like the details in the book. The doors open, Claire thinks something is up. She's actually carrying a basket of turnips. I don't know if it's turnips in the TV show, but she's coming home. She has a carry of something. Um, and the one guy's name that he brings is Jed, just in the book and in the TV show. And then I love um Jamie's reaction when he finds out that's Wendigo. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you."
that was great. That was
Yeah.
great. That was 100% just like Beast Jamie coming out, and he was ready to mess his day up, and just like
Mm-hmm.
I wanted, and I loved how everyone just like hold him back, hold him back, hold him back.
Mm-hmm.
That was great.
Um, the one thing that they didn't go over was when Claire went to go. As much as like I've lost, like this makes me lose all sympathy for him, but in the book he's even more of an ass because he's just like, yo man, and he's just like very trippy and he does like a lot of drugs and stuff. But he explains to Claire, or maybe it's no, it was Claire. He explains to Claire like there was a group of them who were like studying kind of like Galus, I guess, how time travel works. And the guy that was the head of their group was named Raymond. And Claire just happens to wonder if it was Master Raymond from season 2 from France. Because she always suspected he was a time traveler.
Yeah,
He had like that healing power, and he said something about he like things from not of this time or whatever. And so she had just always wondered, but when she asked him like what he looked like, he was like, I don't know, man, it was a long time ago.
I thought their leader was Ottertooth.
Mm-mm. He was, I mean, maybe in the show they said it. I just thought he was one of them. In the
I'll,
book, he was just
I'll go
one of
back
them.
and look this up again, but I thought that Ottertooth, at least in the series, TV show, was their leader. He's the one who organized it and brought them back.
Maybe, but in the book, it was a guy named Raymond. But okay, so how about Mrs. Bug with her bag and the gold that falls out? What the hell is that, right?
Um, that was certainly Jamie had a weird reaction to that, and I mean, he was certainly stunned that there were like bricks of gold, but like Jamie had an immediate reaction. Jamie wasn't even like, "Huh, why is there gold there?" Immediately, he was just like angry immediately, like he knew, like he recognized the gold.
Mm-hmm. Well, I in the book they noticed they had mentioned that it actually had a fleur de lis. Is that
Yeah,
how you pronounce it? I'm really bad at French. Which would mark it as the French Jacobite gold. I don't know if you can. I'll have to maybe look back and see if you can see it in the TV show. And in the book, Jocasta and Duncan actually leave River Run and move to Nova Scotia because the French, like we knew that they had French gold because they left Culloden with the French gold, but you kind of, well, I assumed that they had used it all building River Run. But in the book, they actually still have a stash of gold in the mausoleum where Hector Cameron is buried. And um, Duncan and Jocasta, one of the reasons they're moving is also because the gold is gone. They don't know where it went. It like disappeared. And so Mr. and Mrs. Bug have been taking the gold. So, but I don't, but Jocasta, like I said, like she mentioned the gold like one time in last season on the one episode she was in. But you kind of just, I mean, would you just assume she meant, because we, like I said, we knew she had gold. And she blamed it on the death of Morna, and
Yeah.
so kind of could just be like, oh, she's remembering the gold, but it's spent. Like you don't think she has any left over.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I really got a sense from the show about whether it was spent or still around.
Hmm. Yeah, they don't really say. I just kind of assumed that that's
What we
what
were
it was
assuming.
on. Hmm. Like I don't know how much gold it was or how much things cost. So yeah, so that's all I have to say about the episode. Is there anything else you have to say about the episode? I
No,
did a lot of the talking this time, but
we're
I'm
good.
not sorry.
Yeah, we're in. Give everyone a break, and we'll
Yeah.
come back for 7:03.
Yeah, wait, I want to do the preview real quick.
Okay.
So we see that the house is burned. It's like a show. Roger and Brianna are driving up to Lollybrook in the future, and I wonder if there's going to be, because there's a time jump in um, the book, and it's kind of like 2 years forward. Like Mandy's has had her operation, she's fine. I think she's like 2.5 ish. So I'm wondering if they'll have to recast Jemmy because he'll be. Oh, also in the book, Amanda's supposed to have really dark curly hair like Claire, but I noticed the like the little shot of her, she kind of looked like she had red hair. So we'll see. But Jemmy's supposed to have red hair in the book, so there you go. Um, and oh, and we see a funeral, and we see Ian looking very, very sad, very distraught. So who has died? I know who's
I know.
died.
All right. Looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, it sounds good. So everyone have a good night. Hope you liked our video. Hope you can join us for the next one. And thanks for watching.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.